You know what's rad? Totally rad. Ah, the 90s. Truly a time to remember, and a time to desperately forget. In this game, Totally Rad is definitely one of those two. Anyway, Totally Rad is a 1991 NES game made by Jalico. It first appeared on the Japanese Famicom as Magic John. There's actually a good amount of differences from Totally Rad and Magic John. But most of these changes have to do with the game's intro rather than the actual game. Like I was saying, the original Japanese version of the game had a much different story. But seeing as everything I try to find in the game is an incomprehensible moonspeak, I'm gonna have to wing it with this too. One of the weirdest changes from Magic John to Totally Rad has to be the main character's name. North Americans would have a pretty tough time relating to a character named, John. So instead, he's called Jake. Hey, if the translators think it's important to note, I'm gonna talk about it. So you've heard me ramble on for a good amount about this game, but I really haven't spoken of it. I mean, if you were to look over at the game's cover art, could you guess what it's about? Yeah, spoiler alert, that green scaly goblin thing with the rad orange mohawk? Yeah, he doesn't show up in the game at all. By the way, it's a Mega Man ripoff. Or rather, it's a Mega Man ripoff if Mega Man gave you only 3 different powers at the start of the game that turned Mega Man into anthropomorphic animal warriors. But you know how in Mega Man, those powers were, actually useful? Yeah, Totally Rad's powers flat out cripple you more than they really do help you. The different powers you have in this game are bird, fish, dog I think, and this kid. I mean, you start out as the kid. All he can do is jump kinda high and fire a magic projectile that can be charged up to 3 blasts. And there really isn't any reason why you should stay astray from the kid. Every other character moves just about the same, and he's the only form that has a chargeable attack. So that also makes him the strongest out of every character. The kid is the only form that can let you perform a spell. These spells take up a certain amount of magic with every use, and for the most part are kinda useless. One restores you to full health, the other only half your health, a time freezing move, and finally a move that increases your character's speed, or jumping. Honestly, they're not really that memorable. The only really useful move is the full health one. There's no reason to bother with any other, except for the health move that gets you only half your health if you want to save up on your magic. But be careful, if you still have full health when you use that move, you're essentially wasting magic so you can have less health than you did before. Bird is definitely the most useful form outside of the kid, and is one you'll find yourself using a lot because it gives you the power of flight. There isn't any handicap either. You can just keep tapping the A button for however long you want, so there really shouldn't be much of a challenge when it comes to platforming in this game. Dog, mole, or whatever this thing is supposed to be. Hedgehog? Yeah, let's just call it a mammal. Anyway, mammal is the last really useful power you'll find yourself using at least once in the game. It's not like that matters much, seeing as the bird and kid forms are infinitely better in every way imaginable. While bird and kid both have projectiles, mammal's got this lame beam thing that only hurts enemies when you're right next to them. Like the bird form, you also get an additional power, but this one is just a lame knockoff of Samus's screw attack, except that it doesn't do any damage. Although this does mean that you're invincible every time you jump, I'll have to bring up the fact that you have no way of attacking whenever you jump, also. Heck, even the bird form gave you the option to attack. This one just leaves you defenseless the second you touch the ground. Kinda ironic, ain't it? Save the best for last, that's what I always say. Or rather, that's what I used to say before I met the game's fish form. Any other form gets damaged once they touch water, so naturally you think that the fish would let you swim with no problem, right? Well, you'd be if the game was consistent on what damages you or not. Seriously, there's no way of telling what hurts you or not when it comes to water, so no matter when you jump in a section of water, you always risk the chance of losing health, unless the game flat out forces you to go into those sections. And it's not like that the entire game is in a sewer or something, so even while the mammal gave you a useless power, at least they let you use that power. With fish, it's like they gave up halfway through and never really bothered finishing it. And that's it for all your special attacks in the game. There's also a couple stage clearing special moves you have, but for the most part, they're also useless. Although they give you multiple different options for attacks, They all do essentially the same thing, except with a different elemental theme. I mean, what's the point of having a fire attack if it does the same exact thing as a water attack? I guess they're meant for use whenever you're fighting the game's bosses. But even then, they aren't nearly as effective as sticking to a single form and occasionally healing yourself. Don't expect anything too out of the ordinary with this game when it comes to levels and stage design. The only thing that makes Totally Rad stand out from every other game out there is the aesthetics. Seriously, when it isn't having you fight horrifically beautiful end bosses, Totally Rad manages to have multiple scrolling backgrounds going on as you walk. Trust me, for an 8-bit system, Totally Rad pulls off some next-generation effects. Oh, come on. No, I didn't. No, I didn't die. Get used to the screen, because you're going to be seeing it a lot. What makes the game so hard has to be that there aren't really any power-ups or recovery items at all. The only way to regain your health is by using your magic. And the only way to regain magic is by beating a stage or just by flat out dying. Take into consideration that you have only 6 pellets of life, and that most enemies move way too fast for you to react. So once you power down from whatever animal form you have to do a full health restore spell, and then change back into the animal form, you've already wasted 6 magic points, or bars, whatever the increment for magic is. So if the game gives you a total of 12 magic whatevers, this makes it nearly impossible to get through most stages without dying at least twice. Totally Rad is definitely one of the forgotten titles of the platforming era. If you can find the game's cartridge, I recommend it, but only if you can find it for cheap. I myself would only spend $5 for a copy. Anything above 10, and I'd hold off for something a bit more worthwhile, like Wampum or Nightshade. Oh, and because apparently I need to dumb down my entire thought process into a numerical system, I give Totally Rad a Green Power Ranger out of 10. This has been Pulp Nonfiction, Brian's Rants, signing off.